Hello and welcome back to Wrongmar. In today's science lesson, we're going to be taking a look at scientists at work. And the specific job that we're looking at today is the job of a forensic scientist. Our WALT for today is to identify the ways that science can be used to help us solve crimes. Years and years ago, it was really quite easy to get away with a crime. As long as nobody saw you doing it and you were at least a little bit clever, you pretty easily could get away with whatever crime you had committed. However, that all changed when scientists came on board. How do you think a scientist could help to catch a criminal? Pause the video and see if you can write down an answer or two. Well, these super scientists are called forensic scientists. Forensic scientists help to analyze evidence from crime scenes to help the police collect proof that somebody has committed a crime. This job needs a lot of knowledge from all three branches of science: physics, biology, and chemistry. A good forensic scientist needs to be good at thinking outside the box to try and solve a problem. But how exactly do they help police solve crimes? Well, these are just three ways that a forensic scientist could help solve a crime. They might be asked to do DNA tests. They might be asked to test some unknown substances found at a crime scene. Or they might be asked to help the police match fingerprints to their suspects. They need to be patient and resilient to make sure that their results are as accurate as possible. This is people's lives that we're talking about. So back to our crime scene. Ideal situation would be the police have managed to find some DNA evidence, maybe a piece of spit or a piece of hair that the criminal left behind. If this is the case, we can take it to the scientists to do some testing. DNA testing can help match a piece of evidence to a suspect, or it could help us find out about their ethnicity or their family. After the forensic scientist puts the DNA through loads of different tests, the DNA makes a pattern like this one. The scientists will make very careful observations, looking for matching patterns or similarities with the suspects. Kinda like a really hard game of spot the difference. Back to our crime scene again. Okay, we're not so lucky. There's no DNA left behind, but there's an unusual liquid on the ground here, and we're not quite sure what it is. It might be to do with the crime, it might not be. If a detective finds an unknown substance at a crime scene, it's important for them to find out exactly what it is so that the police have as much information as possible. A forensic scientist has to use their knowledge of chemistry to test how the substance reacts to different things like heat or acid or water. These reactions will tell them what the substance is, or what it isn't. You don't want to get blood mixed up with jam. Okay, we're having terrible luck. This criminal is clearly a genius. No DNA, no unusual substances. But wait, what's this? A fingerprint. Do you know anything about fingerprints already? Where do they come from? How could they be used by a forensic scientist? Pause the video and write down a few answers. Well, for a policeman or a forensic scientist, a fingerprint is the jackpot. Our fingerprints develop before we are even born, and everyone's fingerprint is completely unique. Even identical twins have different fingerprints. This is why you can sometimes use a fingerprint as a password on your phone or maybe on a safe, but it isn't always the most secure way of locking things. The fact that everyone's fingerprints are different means that matching a person's fingerprint to one found at a crime scene can prove that they were there. When we touch something, the natural sweat and oil on our skin transfers to the object, leaving the pattern of our fingerprint behind. To collect the print, a fine powder can be gently brushed over the print, which will stick to it. Then, using a sticky side of some tape, the print can be lifted and stored for evidence. When the prints are brought back to the lab, computers and a careful observation with a magnifying glass can be used to match two fingerprints by just looking at the patterns that the tiny ridges on our fingertips make. There are three main types of fingerprint patterns: loops, whorls, and arches. Let's see which ones you have. First up are the loops. This is the most common pattern found in a fingerprint. A loop starts on one side and loops around and ends on the same side. You might also spot a little triangle called a delta. The next pattern we're going to look at is the whorl. Around 1 in 4 fingerprints have got a whorl pattern. They're much more rare. The whorl pattern looks like a spiral, or small circles inside of one another. If you have a whorl, you should have 2 deltas in it. And the final type of fingerprint is an arch. An arch starts on one side of the finger and ends on the opposite side. There's a hill shape in the middle. Arches are the simplest pattern, but also the most rare. So look at your finger. If you've got an arch and your fingerprint, there's only 1 in 20 fingerprints that have that arch. So don't be committing any crimes. If you want to take a closer look at fingerprints, either yours or somebody else's, this is the best way to get a clear fingerprint. Color in a square in pencil on some paper, real thick. Rub the finger you're going to print on the square, and then press your finger onto the sticky side of some sellotape. Then stick the tape onto some fresh white paper. And if you look closely, you'll be able to see the details of the fingerprint. So next time something goes mysteriously missing on you, you now know how to track down the suspect. That's all we have time for today. Until next time, take care.